Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of the JSS Podcast. I am your host, Byron Enriquez, the casual executive and your local finance bro. Today, I want to talk a little bit about something that's kind of a controversial subject within real estate, within the circles of realtors and loan officers and anybody, pretty much anybody you talk to about real estate. And the topic today we're talking about is renting by choice or renting by necessity. So let me explain that a little bit. I'll kind of set the stage a little bit. For years, society, different generations have always said that you need to own real estate or own your home. Let's take it back. Not own real estate, own your home, because that's the American dream, right? I know a lot of us, children of immigrants, first thing that your parents teach you is, they came over to this country. We have to buy land, you have to buy real estate, you buy a home. And that's always been kind of ingrained in a lot of people, is to focus on buying your home. And that's how you know you've made it. That's how you know you're successful, as you've bought your home. I've always been of a different mindset with a lot of this, being in the industry. And I think a lot of people are starting to kind of come around to it. There's a lot of people that I speak to who have a different mentality to that. And it's especially in this market we're in, where interest rates are different, affordability is through the roof. Down payment, to get the down payments that people need, it's become super hard. So that mentality has changed a lot. Right? The old mindset was, again, you went to school, you graduated, you got a job, you got married, you bought a home, and you had the picket fence and you had the dog and all that stuff. And I think that mentality has changed quite a bit. For starters, again, right? Home prices have gone up. Insurance costs have exploded. Property taxes. Interest rates double than what what people have grown up used to. So that mentality of new family formations or in home ownership has definitely changed. So it's been very, very different in how people approach that. But I think and there's two sides of it, right? There's again, people who are renting because of necessity. And there's people who are renting because of a choice. Necessity tells you, hey, you know what? You're going to need to get 20%. And there's obviously different loan programs and different ways to get in without 20%. But let's just, for argument's sake, you have to save 20%. You have to have a stable job, right? You have to, you're good credit, and so there's all these factors that play a part into making a decision to purchase your home, right? But with interest rates being higher, that affects your debt to income ratio. It's harder to qualify. It's hard to save enough for a down payment. Interest rates obviously are a lot higher than what a lot of people went into it or are used to. Wages haven't kept up with inflation lately. Inflation is definitely outpacing job creations. It's outpacing wages. So people are not, so the affordability is harder to get to. So it's hard, especially in certain markets, Miami, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. There's so many markets where, the cost of real estate is extremely expensive, right? So now you think about, okay, well, where, some of our previous generations, some of our parents or grandparents, could purchase a home for, call it $100,000, $150,000, $200,000. Not talking about the $30,000, $50,000, portions, which, it does exist. But if you think about, even somebody at that point who was, $100,000 home saving 20%, that's $20,000, right? Now, average home price, one of the things that we talk about in LA County, Ventura County is, $800,000. So now your 20% is a lot harder. It's a lot harder to come by. It's $160,000, $200,000 that you need to get just to be able to get that basic 20% down payment, right? So then if you can meet that challenge, which is hard enough as it is, now with interest rates being a lot higher, instead of a $1,000 a month payment, $1,200 a month mortgage payment, you're looking at the entry level, you're looking at a $6,500, $7,000 a month mortgage payment, right? So if you're not making double that, then it's going to be very hard to qualify. So it's definitely challenges when it comes to that. Not saying that it's not possible, but it just makes it harder, right? And then now you have two income household. Now you have people who've been saving gifts from family members for the down payments, for the down to help out. So there's a lot more there's a lot harder ways to things that you have to overcome in order to be able to purchase your first home, right? And yes, once you purchase your first home, you're looking at you're building equity, you're building, you have stability, you have something that's gonna be there for a long time, and yes, so things that you have to think about, credit management, financial discipline, reducing your liabilities, cash flow, understanding leverage and how to borrow and, where, what resources you have available for lower down payment programs and all that good stuff, right? So that's definitely a challenge. So there's a lot of people who are renting because they just cannot accomplish those things. So those issues have become stumbling blocks in a way where they can't overcome those. So there is a huge portion of people who are renting because of necessity. They just can't get the down payment, can't afford that monthly payment. The prices are astronomical, so there's all these issues that have caused people to have to rent. On the flip side, you do also have this other mindset, this other, people who way to look at it, and myself included in this, where, there's certain people who decide I can rent by choice, right? But there's more to it, right? It's the decision to rent. You see it a lot more with entrepreneurs, with business owners, with investors, with high income earners, people who are using renting as part of their financial strategy. That's not to say that they're not purchasing real estate, right? And that's why I wanted to make the distinction between purchasing real estate or purchasing your home. Right? There's a lot of people who are of the mindset, myself included, with that your home isn't or shouldn't be necessarily part of your investment strategy, right? People are looking at it as in, oh yeah, I'm building equity, I'm building, but are you cashing it out? Are you using it as revenue? Are you going to sell it? Or is this just your home that's untouchable, right? So now, a lot of times when we factor in, net worth, or we're factoring in, the ability to become an accredited investor for certain things, you take your home out of that equation, right? So why is it that mindset that why in a lot of times we don't factor that in, right? So we are seeing that a lot, again, with entrepreneurs, business owners, people who can say, hey, I'd rather rent a house that I can potentially write off the lease, invest in real estate, buying investment properties that are going to cash flow. I'm buying income producing assets, right? So there's a big distinction with that. And I think there's that moment. I think I'm seeing a lot of momentum in that side of it, where people are choosing to rent, still purchasing real estate, still investing in apartment buildings. I was just met some gentlemen for dinner a couple weeks ago, younger guy, and he was like, yeah, I live with my parents. I'm sorry. He lives in a one of his parents' rentals. Technically, still lives for his parents, right? It's his parents' rental. He lives there rent free, but he owns 5 or 6 investment properties, right? So it's a shift to that mindset, and he's in the industry, and he said no. He goes, I'm building my real estate portfolio, as opposed to taking that $500,000 for a down payment in a home, in a personal home, and remodeling it and doing all the things that you do when it's your personal residence, your personal home, because he used that same amount of down payment potentially, and he bought, 2, 3 different investment properties that, were small 2-bedroom, 2-bath little condos, and he was able to get renters in there right away. And then using those rents, he was able to build up enough to purchase a fourth and a fifth. And I think he said he has 6 different investment properties with that same initial investment that he would have had into a home, right? So you're starting to see that shift, and I think it's just, again, it is mindset, because I deal with that, and talking to a lot of people. It's like, oh, you need to buy this, you need to buy your home, you need to buy a home and set roots down, and there's a whole new generation of people who aren't thinking that way. There's a whole different generation. I might have talked about it on a previous episode, which is called career minimalism, right? Where this younger generation is going into things saying, especially with the new, since COVID, with all the work from home opportunities, where you're going into this generation that are saying, I want to work enough to be able to fund my travel, or I want to work enough to be able to be nomadic and be able to explore the world and soak in a lot of the cultures, and they're saying, I don't want to be tied down to a house. I don't want to be tied down to a mortgage, because then you can't have that flexibility, right? So they're using renting, short-term rentals, Airbnbs, or just renting as in general, because they can work from home, and they're saying, oh, I'm gonna, my job's here in California, but I'm gonna go live in Hawaii for 6 months. I'm gonna go live in Italy for a year. I'm gonna go wherever the surf takes them, or wherever the wind takes them. So they're using that same. They don't want to be tied down to that mortgage. They're using that flexibility to be able to organize their lives around and be able to be a little bit more flexible with stuff. In real estate and buying a home, there's an emotional side, and as much as we say, oh, it's financial, and that's one of the challenges that I have, just because some of that social side of it, it's hard for me to understand at times, because the way my brain works is more financial, and it's more black and white. So, we're talking to somebody about purchasing a home, and you're showing them, hey, this is financially what you can afford. And then the emotions take over, and they're like, well, I don't like the paint color. I don't like this. I don't like that. Right. So there's a big emotional side that comes with real estate. So it's very hard for people to separate the two. Almost impossible for people to separate the two. Because it is a different approach when you're buying a home. You want the best neighborhood, and sometimes you won't. It doesn't matter if you're overpaying, because this is where you want to live. This is where you can see your kids growing up. This is the school district you want to be in. It has the amenities that you want in a HOA. All the things that come with emotions when it's your home, right? But when you're looking at something as an investment, you look at things differently, and that's one of the things that I teach most first time property flippers, or somebody who's going to flip a property, is take that emotion out of it. Where yes, if it was your home, you would spend that extra $10,000 on those granite countertops or that upgraded appliances, but as an investment property, you're not going to make that same investment out of it, right? So your rate of return on that investment is going to be different. So you approach it with a different mindset of, hey, I'm going to do what I need to do to be able to generate higher income, higher cash flow, or the rate of return on my my initial investment, it needs to be higher, right? So you start approaching things very differently with that, right? When it's your home, you're looking at security, you're looking at stability, you're looking at, this is going to be my legacy, this is the home that I can see my grandchildren coming to visit me, right? And I just, there's a shift when that comes in, and that's been ingrained in a lot of us, that's the American dream. Get this home, and you want to build the roots, put down roots, and I don't know. I just think, to me, it's different, because I think you can accomplish that in different ways and different formats, and it doesn't have to look the same as how it has for a lot of people for a long time. For a lot of people, a house can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse, or just kind of like a financial prison that we talk about, where you become so house poor that you're making good money. You're being able to pay for your home and your cars and all the things, but you're not enjoying your life. And I'm always a big proponent of having that, giving yourself that flexibility. You don't want to overextend yourself. You don't want to buy at the wrong time. You don't want to drain all your liquidity, and then be house poor, because again, with home ownership, there's a whole nother list. Plumbing goes wrong, roof, electrical, anything goes wrong in the home, it's your responsibility, right? When you're a renter, you're limited some of that risk. If you want to upgrade or if you want to change things, you can either move or you can find something else. There's when you get into, again, another category when you see a lot of this is in the ultra luxury market. There's these people, athletes, entertainers, Hollywood. They have the resources and they don't mind paying, but they don't want to deal with having a remodel, and they don't want to have to deal with purchase. They just say, hey, look, I want this home in Malibu. I want it this. Sure, I'll pay $100,000 a month in rent, right? And we may think that's absurd, but for them, again, on the other side of it, the part of it that I always talk about is if you're doing it properly and you're a business owner or not an entrepreneur, if you're approaching this as an investment and you're leasing these properties, with your LLC or your corporation and your business, and it's a lot of times it's a write-off. Hey, and it does help, being able to also give you flexibility where you're using, again, it's a financial strategy. If you're using that same down payment and you're investing in JSS Capital into an investment fund, using that in the stock market and crypto or different things, and if you can generate a higher return now with those same funds, why not? Why not explore different options? If you can use that to start a business, if you can use that to, again, you don't want to be tied down to that mortgage that doesn't, and it doesn't allow for other financial opportunities. There's an opportunity cost that comes with that, right? And people sometimes just focus on the equity part. Oh, I'm building equity, and look, I'm in real estate. I preach it. Yes, you will build equity, but it's something that's long term, right? If you're not adding value to the piece of real estate immediately, it's a long term investment, and that's okay, right? And I think that's part of your investment portfolio if that's the way you want to look at it. But if you can use those same resources to invest in other things that will generate you revenue right away, and build on that, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's just a different approach, and I think that's something that's a conversation worth having with people. This is one of the things that the way I've always looked at things for forever, and for me, it's buying assets. There's a book a long time ago, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that's one of the things he talks about. He talks about investing your money. A car isn't an asset; it's a liability. A house isn't an asset; it's a liability, right? Because there's a mortgage on it. There's a liability payment. If you're talking about it in accounting terms, it's a liability. But if you're investing in real estate, where yes, you're making a mortgage payment, but the property is cash flowing, now that's an asset. That's not a liability, right? You're still net positive in the revenue you're generating, so it is not a liability. So you're investing in assets as opposed to liabilities. Cars and home. And I say that specifically is a liability. And that's okay, right? If you're still have the ability to have other investments or have the ability to invest in other things, and take that home out of your net worth calculation or net worth conversation, then you start seeing things a little bit differently. Again, like I said, because a home comes with maintenance, comes with costs, it comes with property taxes, it comes with a lot of things that are needed right now with in California, we're going into fire season, and those are definite issues that come in. Insurance has gone through the roof lately because of a lot of those things. So again, it's just a part of the bigger picture. One of the things that that I always like to talk to people about is look at things big picture, look at things as holistically as possible, because all of these things feed into it. What's your lifestyle like? Do you want to travel? Do you want to, my wife and I, one of the things that we talk about is being able to travel a lot. We enjoy traveling. We enjoy, going abroad. One of our goals in life is, and, things we're working towards is, being able to spend, 3 months here in California, spend 3 months in Mexico, spend, 3 months in Italy, and being able to have that flexibility to do that while our investments and our assets are working towards that. Again, it's a mindset. I think, nowadays, social media and the peer pressure that comes with a lot of this is, hey, you have to buy a home, you have to post it, you have to, show everybody that you're successful. It's a badge of honor, and to me, it's sad, right? That how people are fall into that same, I don't want to call it a prison, but they fall into that. They fall into that, and they're, making those rash decisions, or they're jumping into something a little bit earlier than they should when they want to still be able to travel and they want to still be able to do some stuff, and then they can't, and then they're, say, oh, well, when I retire, in 30, 40 years, when I pay off my mortgage, that's another thing too now, it's one of the trends that we've been seeing is people are looking to get 40, 50-year mortgages in order to be able to bring that affordability in check and be able to afford a house. I mean, right now, I just saw a number that said the average first-time home buyer is 39 years old, which is skyrocketed. Before it was a lot lower than that. But so let's just do the math. The average first-time home buyer is 39 years old. All right, call it 40 for math's sake. And they're getting into a 30, 40, 50-year mortgage. Let's just not even go for the 50-year, right? Let's just they're doing a traditional 30-year mortgage. So if they're 40 years old, buying their first home, getting into a 30-year mortgage, and that's assuming that they never upgrade home, and they're going to stay in that first home that they buy is going to be their forever home, which I can tell you almost never happens, right? It's always entry level, and they move up. But let's just take that out, and let's just say their first home that they bought is going to be their forever home. So they're buying it at 40 years old, getting into a 30-year mortgage. So that tells you that they're not going to have that home paid off until they're 70 years old. Average retirement age right now is 62 and a half, 63 years old. So they're going to have to put off retirement because their home is not going to be paid off. Just think about that for a minute, right? Or now people are, talking pushing 40, 50-year loan. If that same 40-year-old is buying a first home and is getting a 40-year loan, now that property is not paid off until they're 80. Or if they get a 50-year, until they're 90 years old. What's the difference between owning a home and renting? If you're just making a payment, you're either renting from a landlord or you're renting from the bank. And once you start looking at things in that frame of mind, I don't know. In my head, it's just, I think there's different approaches, different strategies. Again, not saying purchasing real estate is bad. Quite the opposite. I want people to purchase real estate. I want people to invest in real estate, but make it work for you. Turn it into an asset, not a liability. And if you look at things that way, you're going to see the opportunities. I think you're going to see the flexibility. You're going to take that pressure off yourself. For those younger people who are watching, who are thinking, oh, I have to buy a home. I got a graduate college, graduated high school, whatever it is. Get your job, your career started. Looking to get married, to buy a home. And I think once you strip that away and you take that pressure off, you'll start approaching things differently, and you start visualizing of what you need to do or what you want to do and how you manage and your strategy financially to invest and being able to generate wealth in different avenues. I think that changes, and I think it really will change your mindset and really change your goals and how you approach things. So again, I just thought that was something that's important because I think that it's a conversation that's worth having. It's a conversation that's worth having with your spouse, your partner, when you guys are talking about forming a family and I say forming a family loosely. That's just the term we use in the industry. To account for people getting married or joining with us with a partner and starting their lives together. So again, just the conversation, and I think it's so important to these are the things that you should be speaking about, and planning, with people around you, and the goals that you have and the strategic plans that you want to do. So again, thanks for listening. Hopefully this is something that brings you some knowledge and some information. If it does, please share, and ask some questions. We love answering them. So we're here available to you guys on social media, on our websites, at the office. We'd love to talk. Thank you guys for listening and watching, and I'll see you next week.